Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Read Aloud. Today we're going to read chapters 20 and 21 of Refugee. And then, so chapters 20 goes back to Isabel, where we left off in Isabel's story. They were all on the small boat that Senor Castillo made, and they were trying to fix the engine because the engine had stopped, and then all of a sudden a huge tanker shows up and kind of surprises them. So that's where we're at. It's kind of like this crazy action-packed moment. Isabel. The Straits of Florida, somewhere north of Cuba, 1994. One day from home. The tanker emerged from the darkness like some giant leviathan come to swallow them. It stood at least 7 stories tall out of the water and was so wide it filled the horizon. Its pointed bow sent huge waves sluicing away, and 2 massive anchors stood out from the sides like the horns of a monster. Isabella quailed in fear. It was straight out of a nightmare. "A ship," Lido yelled. "We've drifted into the shipping lanes." But by now, everyone had seen it. The rumble of the ship's massive engines had awakened Mommy and Senora Castillo, making sure everyone was scrambling around in the boat in panic, making it rock dangerously. "It's coming right for us," Amara screamed. Isabella climbed over Ivan, trying to get as far away from the tanker as she could. She slipped and fell with a splash into the bottom of the boat. "Everybody settle down," Senor Castillo cried, but no one was listening. "We have to get the engine started," Poppy cried. He yanked frantically on the starter chain, barely giving the engine time to cough and die before he yanked on it again. "Don't, you'll flood it and it will never start," Louise said, trying to wrestle the chain from him. "Where are the matches?" Lido called. "We have to start a fire. They can't see us in the dark." Oh my gosh, it's dark too. "Here," said Ivan. He lifted a matchbox from the styrofoam carton that held a few emergency supplies they brought. "No," Poppy yelled. He lunged for Ivan's outstretched hand, and together they fell against the side of the boat, tipping it. Isabella's mother fell into the pool of water on the bottom and slid into the side of the boat with a thump. Isabella crawled to help her. Lido grabbed Poppy by the shirt. "What are you doing?" he demanded. Poppy held the matchbox out of Lido's reach. "We don't want to be seen, you old fool," he yelled over the growling thunder of the tank. "If they see us, they have to rescue us. It's maritime law. And if they rescue us, they'll send us back to Cuba." "Would you rather they sent us to the ocean floor?" Lido yelled. Isabella couldn't help looking up as she pulled her mother out of the water. "It's getting closer," Isabella yelled. So we're going to do a log for again and again for signposts. And if we look at the beginning of the chapter, we see a lot of italicized sentences. And if we look here, we see a lot of italicized sentences. So we can take the quote for, "Would you rather they send us to the ocean floor?" Would you rather they send us to the ocean floor? We can take that as our quote. But it's really over the 2 pages. It's multiple cases of the author specifically using italicized font. Now remember, italicized font is to draw emphasis. The reason the author is doing this is because what it's doing is it's bringing us into the action of the moment, right? Everyone's kind of freaking out. If they don't get out of the way, the tanker's just going to slice right through them and kill them all and bust the boat up. So it's kind of this huge moment of huge intensity. So by using italicized font, what the author is doing is they're letting us see that intensity of the moment. "It's getting closer," Isabella cried. The tanker was still hundreds of meters away, but it was so huge it felt like it was on top of them. They were never getting out of its way. Isabella's heart thumped so hard she thought she was going to burst right out of her chest. "If you don't want them to know we're here, maybe you shouldn't start the engine," Amara yelled. They'll never hear us no matter what we do, Senor Castillo said. The tanker was so loud now it sounded like a jet engine. He and Louise flipped a switch on their own engine and yanked the starter chain again. A puff of gray smoke poofed from the engine, but it didn't catch. The tanker loomed larger, closer. Isabella cringed. It was going to hit them. Oh, God. The tanker loomed. Oh, sorry. Louise yanked on the chain. A cough, a sputter, nothing. Cough, sputter, nothing. Cough, sputter, nothing. The sea swelled in front of the tanker, pushing them higher and away, and for a fleeting moment, Isabella's hopes rose with it. But the swell passed, and they were pulled right back into the tanker's massive draw. Their little blue boat spun sideways, and they zoomed towards the big ship's prow. The tanker was going to tear them in half right down the middle. Isabella looked up at the terrified eyes of Ivan as he realized the same thing, and they screamed. Then suddenly they were both thrown to the bottom of the boat, and something buzzed like a mosquito underneath the towel of the tanker. Louise had gotten the engine to start. Their little boat shot forward, thank God, in the water, darting out of the way of the tanker's prow. But the waves thrown off the big ship lifted up at the back end of Isabella's boat and dumped an ocean of seawater on top of them. Isabella swallowed a mouthful of salty water and tumbled across the boat. She slammed into something hard, and her shoulders exploded with pain. She came up sputtering. She was hip deep in water, and the engine had stopped again, and none of that mattered right now. Isabella's father had fallen overboard. Isabella saw his white hair rise out of the water. Senor Castillo gulped for air, then disappeared as a wave from the massive tanker wake rolled over him. Senor Castillo! Isabella cried. Oh, sorry, Luis's father, Ivan's father. Papa! Ivan shouted. Where is he? Do you see him? Isabella and Ivan frantically searched the dark water, watching for Senor Castillo to surface again. They had missed the huge ship's prow by mere meters, but the waves the behemoth created as it passed were just as dangerous. The wave heaved and sank in the little boats, tipping over sideways as the waves caught in it midships. Everyone was starting to get back up from the floor of the boat when they were set tumbling again. Ivan rolled to the other side of the boat, but Isabella hung on. There, she saw Senor Castillo's head pop up from under the water, but only for a grasping second, too quick to get enough air. In a flash, Isabella remembered her grandmother disappearing under a wave just like that 2 years ago, and without another thought, Isabella dove in after Senor Castillo. Oh my goodness. This is a really intense chapter, and I hope that they're okay. All right, we go back to Mahmoud's story. Remember when we left Mahmoud? They were staying at a shopping mall, and they had paid a lot of money to stay one night in this shopping mall. And then they were staying in a store, but all of the store had refugees living in there, and they were waiting on the boat to take them. Mahmoud, Izmir, Turkey, 2015, 11 days from home. Mahmoud screamed. He howled louder than a fighter jet, and his parents didn't even tell him to hush. Lights came on in houses nearby, and curtains ruffled as people looked out at the noise. Mahmoud's mother broke down in tears, and her father left the life jackets he carried dropped to the ground. The smuggler had just told him that their boats weren't leaving tonight again. No boat today, tomorrow, he told Mahmoud's father. It was the exact same thing he told Mahmoud's father the day before, and the day before that, and every day for the last week. A text would come telling them to hurry, out to the beach, and every time they would pack up what few things they owned, grab the life jackets, and rush through the streets of Izmir to the parking lot, and every time there would be no boat waiting for them. Right, it was the weather, the smuggler said. Then another family that was supposed to go with them hadn't arrived yet. Then it was the Turkish Coast Guard patrols, or the boat wasn't ready, or there was some reason they couldn't leave. It was like some cruel schoolyard game of keep away. Mahmoud and his family were at their wits' end. This off and on again business was tearing them apart. All except for Walid, lifeless Walid, who didn't flinch when the bombs exploded. So we could log that as again and again, this idea of Walid being so traumatized that he's become this lifeless shell of a human. In fact, let's do it since we've already talked about it. So the quote we can take says, all except Walid, lifeless Walid, who didn't even flinch when the bombs exploded. So we can take that quote, log this again and again, and this is again and again idea. Remember, repetition of ideas is a strategy author brings up, and the strategy helps us understand deeper character development, but also the theme. The fact that the trauma of their lives right now is so intense, and because of it, the stress and trauma to Walid's poor little body has made him just completely lifeless. That he has no reactions, even in moments of life or death. I want to go back to Syria. I don't care if we die, Mahmoud said after he just let out his scream. I want to get out of here. Even as he said it, he heard the whine in his voice, the pathetic toddler-like frustration. Part of him was embarrassed. He was older than that, more mature. He was almost a man. But another part of him just wanted to stomp his feet and pitch a fit, and the part of him was getting harder and harder to keep quiet. Little Hannah started crying too, and Mahmoud's mother tried to calm them by pulling Mahmoud into a hug. Look at it this way, Dad said. Now we have more time to practice our Turkish. No one laughed. Let's get back to the mall before someone takes our place, Mom said wearily. Mahmoud carried the life jackets so that his father could carry Walid, and the two quickly fell asleep on the father's shoulders. His mother carried Hannah. Even though Mahmoud hated the desperate feeling of defeat in going back to the mall, at least it meant not sleeping outside in the park. But this time, someone was waiting for them at the mall entrance. There were two of them, both Turkish men, in matching blue Turk tracksuits. One of them was muscular, with curly black hair, a thin beard, and a thick gold chain necklace. The other was overweight and wore mirrored sunglasses, even though it was night. He was the one with the pistol stuck in the waist of his pants. If you want to get inside, you gotta pay rent, the burly man told them. Since when, Mahmoud's father said. Since now, the man said. We own this building and we're tired of you Syrians freeloading. More bullies, thought Mahmoud, just like Syria. Mahmoud's legs went numb and he thought he might fall over. He couldn't bear the thought of walking any further, looking for a place to live again. How much, Mahmoud's father asked wearily. 5,000 pounds a night, the muscular man said. Dad sighed and started to put Walid down so he could pay the man. Each, the man said. Each per night, Dad said. Mahmoud knew his father was doing the math in his head. There were 5 of them, and they'd already been there a week. How long could they afford to pay 25 pounds a day and still have enough for the boat and whatever came afterwards? No, Mahmoud's father said. Mom started to protest, but he shook his head. No, we already have our things. We'll find somewhere else to stay. It's only till tomorrow, the big man chuckled. Right, tomorrow. Mahmoud staggered along behind his parents as they roamed the streets of Ismar looking for somewhere to sleep. His parents carried Walid and Hannah, but not him. He was too old to be carried anymore, and for the first time he wished he wasn't. They finally found the doorway of the travel agency set back from the street, and no one else was sleeping there. They were just settling in when a Turkish police car came down the street. Mahmoud shrank back into the corner, trying to be invisible, but the police lights came on and beeped its electric siren at them. Burp, burp. You can't sleep there, a police officer told them through a loudspeaker, so they got up to walk again. Mahmoud was so tired he started to cry, but he did it softly so his parents wouldn't hear. He hadn't cried like this since the first night when the bombs had started to fall on Aleppo. So let's take that as a memory moment. He hadn't cried like this since the first night the bombs dropped. Sorry, I'll read it out. He hadn't cried like this since the first night when the bombs started to drop on Aleppo. So this is a memory moment, and this memory moment has him thinking about when the Civil War started, when the unrest started, and his reaction to it was crying and afraid, right? But now his crying is, in a way, it's a little bit different. It's more of a hopeless, rock bottom, things are never going to get better kind of crying. Another car came down the road, and at first Mahmoud worried it was another police car, but it was a BMW sedan. On a whim, Mahmoud darted into the car's headlights and waved life jackets in his arms. Mahmoud, no, the mother cried. The BMW slowed, its lights bright in his face. The driver honked at him, and Mahmoud hurried around to the driver's side window. Please, can you help us, Mahmoud begged. My baby sister. But the car was already shooting away. Another car followed it, and it drove right past Mahmoud. Mahmoud, get out of the street, his father called. You'll get yourself killed. Mahmoud didn't care anymore. There had to be someone who would help them. He waved the life jackets at the next car, and miraculously it stopped. It was an old brown Skoda, and the driver rolled down the window down by hand. He was an elderly, wrinkled man with a short white beard, and he wore a black and white keffiyeh headscarf. Please, can you help us? Mahmoud asked. My family and I have nowhere to go, and my sister is only a baby. Dad jogged up and tried to pull Mahmoud away. We're very sorry, Mahmoud's father told the man. We didn't mean to bother you. We'll be on our way. Mahmoud was annoyed. He had finally gotten somebody to stop, and now his father was trying to send him away. My house is too small for all of you, the man said, but I have a little car dealership and you can stay in the office. Arabic. Mahmoud was thrilled. The man spoke fluent Arabic. No, we couldn't possibly, Mahmoud's father started to say, but Mahmoud cut him off. Yes, thank you, Mahmoud cried. He waved his mother over. He speaks Arabic and he says he'll help us. Dad tried to apologize again, to refuse the offer of help, but Mahmoud was already climbing in the back seat with the load of life jackets. Mom got in beside him with Hannah, and Mahmoud's father shifted Walid into his arms so he could reluctantly sit in the passenger seat. Mahmoud, his father said, unhappy, but Mahmoud didn't care. They were off their feet and they were on their way to somewhere to sleep. The little Skoda's gears ground as the man got them underway. My name is Shama Nasir, the man told them, and Mahmoud's father introduced them all. You are Syrian, yes, refugees? The man asked. I know what it's like. I am a refugee too, from Palestine. Mahmoud frowned. If this man was a refugee and he owned his own car and his own business, how long have you lived in Turkey? The man asked Mr. Nasir. 67 years now, Mr. Nasir said, smiling at Mahmoud in the rearview mirror. I was forced to leave my home in 1948 during the first Arab-Israeli war. They were still fighting there, but someday when my homeland is restored, I will go home again. Dad's phone chimed, surprising them all and making Walid stir. His father read the glowing screen. It's the smuggler, he said. The boat is ready now. Mahmoud had learned not to get excited about the text, and even so, he still felt a flutter of hope in his chest. You take a boat to Greece tonight? Mr. Nasir asked. Maybe, Mahmoud's father said, if it's there. I will take you to it, Mr. Nasir said, and if it is not there, you can come back and stay with me. You are very kind, Mom said. Mahmoud didn't know why, but his mother pulled Mahmoud close and gave him a hug. It took a very little time for the car to take them back to the beach, and when they pulled to a stop, they were all quiet as they had stared. This time, finally, a boat was there. All right, I will see you tomorrow for chapters 22 and chapters 23. I miss you all.